Going live with breaking news here. We're trying once again something new. Hope you can hear me and see me. I want to just tell you that some things have happened coming down in the breaking news area today. As you can see in um, the title of this particular show, this particular breaking news short update is two major court decisions came down. While I'm talking to you, I'm going to multitask here. I'm going to see if I see we've got some people on here live right now. Yeah, so I see that people are on here, and I want to talk to you about what has happened today. Two huge decisions went down. Two decisions was made. One was made in the United States, and one was made in Canada. I want to start first with the one in Canada. Uh, this just came down. Breaking news: Judge finds Pastor Artur Pawlowski guilty of violating Alberta's Critical Infrastructure Defense Act. For those that's been following this, you know that Pastor Artur uh, stood firm during the lockdowns, had services, prayed for people, was feeding the homeless during the lockdowns when Canada's had one of the most uh, one of the strictest lockdown policies and mandate policies in the whole world. But Artur never got violent, never fought back, but was arrested several times, accused of many different crimes, basically for having church and worshiping God. But he was found guilty today. And I want to read it to you. This is from the Rebel News, which is a very reputable anti-establishment news organization in Canada, and quite frankly, they report around the world. And really, some of the only information about the World Economic Forum when they was gathered in Davos came from Rebel News. They had actual reporters on the ground there. I want to read this to you. Breaking news. You can find this at rebelnews.com. Pastor Arturo Pawlowski found guilty. The verdict is in, and Pastor Arturo Pawlowski has been found guilty by a judge of violating Alberta's Critical Infrastructure Defense Act. Pastor Arturo became the first person charged and now convicted under the piece of provincial legislation originally drafted in the aftermath of the railway and pipeline protests in the early portion of 2020. You remember the truckers were protesting. There were several things that were protesting. It was mainly the blockade of the Canada-U.S. border crossing, and it had to do with the lockdowns, mandates, and so forth. People's livelihoods were on the line, and they created something called the Critical Infrastructure Defense Act. And it goes on to say that looking at the context of the speech and the content of the tone, it goes on to say, let me read this right here. Judge quotes Arthur saying that they have more momentum at the blockade and power at the Couts border as opposed to someone else, telling him that he should not have broke the line. And then, of course, basically, he's going to be put in jail. And this is what his crime was. He had a 16-minute, oh, night, excuse me, 19-minute sermon and speech that he stood with the truckers and encouraged them and preached the gospel, sang worship songs. And because he stood there and they said that they felt like he was encouraging, here it is. It says uh, he has achieved numerous legal victories during this, but as he was repeatedly charged for feeding the homeless in violation of the wine restrictions and protesting lockdowns and mandates. But because he preached the gospel to the truckers and because he was there sharing the gospel, he has been found guilty. A pastor has been found guilty for preaching the gospel during the blockade in during the lockdowns. Now that's one court ruling. That's in Canada. But don't believe if you're in America that doesn't mean that's not coming for you as well, because it is. Here's the other one that just came down. This was in Ohio. This broke 1 hour ago. I'm going to read the headline. I'm going to try my best to read it because I can't say everything that's on it because it'll get me flagged. It's ridiculous that I can't just read this. But you can go and find this. But one of the sites that I use is called winepressnews.com. Winepressnews.com. It's a very reputable site that gives you access to stories that we cover on Monday night. But it's called, this is the title, Court Rules Trans Woman. Listen to the wording of this. Court rules trans woman not guilty of indecent exposure charges after using women's locker room in Ohio. Quote, we are grateful. Listen to how this is worded, y'all. We are grateful that the rule of law and the truth prevailed so that Miss Glines, Miss Glines, and the community can now move on in peace. This was from the Daily Caller. This was quoted from the Daily Caller website. A biological male who identifies as a woman was found not guilty of 3 counts of indecent exposure after using the women's locker room at the YMCA at Xenia, Ohio. Darren Glines, who goes by Rachel, but has not, listen to me, has not undergone any transgender surgeries, was charged with public indecency in December 2022 after 3 reports that Glines exposed himself, that's all I'm going to say, you can read between the lines, on 3 separate occasions while using the women's facility from 21 to 22, one of which underage girls were present, according to documents obtained by the Daily Caller News Foundation. Xenia Municipal Court Judge David McNamee ruled Friday evening that there was no facts to prove Glines had entered, quote, an area of the YMCA where Glines was not supposed to be. What? Quote, it's unfortunate, not only for her, but for the entire community that the filing of these charges ever occurred. We are grateful that the rule of law and the truth prevailed so that Miss Glines and the community can move forward. What? This is unbelievable, y'all. So in one court in Canada, we got a pastor being convicted for preaching the gospel. In another court in our country, the United States of America, rules in favor of a biological male using a women's restroom who has not had any kind of surgery, if you get my drift, getting undressed, but just because there's some makeup involved and clothing changes, everything else that happened in that locker room is supposed to be okay. Now, if I or someone else like me, which is a man who believes he's a man and a biological man and still believes he's a man, did the same thing, it would be a crime. Do you see? Can I just tell it like it is? The stupidity of these 2 rulings and the downward decline of our world that we live in. That is why we have the big picture, and that is why we get on here, and that is why we try to walk that line to tell you things that would get us, not being able to be on this, to walk that line. And look, let me tell you something right now. Before I get off here, let me just say this. I am disgusted that I have to even cover this. I do not want to talk about this. I do not want to cover these items of news, but I guarantee you, 99% of the people that's watching this live right now on Facebook, YouTube, or on the replay did not know what I just told you. So if you hadn't already hit that like button, hit that like button. If you're watching on Facebook, because I'm streaming on Facebook as well, make sure you give us a heart, share, and more than anything, make sure you go to our YouTube channel and that you subscribe there at our YouTube channel, because other than breaking news on my phone, things like this, everything else is on YouTube. So go over there to YouTube if you're not already a subscriber. Thank you for watching this breaking news report. And let's pray. Let's pray for that pastor and pray for those ladies, and quite frankly, young ladies that had brought the charges in this, that I'm sure they're not going to be able to use the YMCA now. They're probably going to stay away. But so let's especially pray for that pastor in Canada and other pastors around the world that that literally are being persecuted for preaching the gospel and standing up against mandates that tells them to shut up. So thank you. Like button, don't forget it. Share. We'll see you on another breaking report.